Yo, what's up guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to 30 oddities of US geography. I used to do, like, when I first started doing these reactions, oddity based geography reactions on the US. These are what, like, just weird facts about geography, right? It's geography facts, but a bit more. Is oddities just like weird facts? I think it is. I can't really remember, but it's not just facts. It's a bit different, I think. But we're going to check this out anyway. Hopefully you're going to enjoy. Links are also in the description to my Patreon, where you can see movie reactions. I've just reacted to The Shawshank Redemption. Love that film. Back to the Future reactions are there, and I'm going to be doing Forrest Gump soon, plus many others based off suggestions. But yeah, links are in the description for those who care. But if not, we're going to check this out and see some of these oddities.
So let's go and look at 30 oddities of US geography. The
Geography. What is that accent?
USA is a very extensive country, leaving it with lots of interesting oddities and curiosities. Today we'll look at 30. The number one oddity which we'll look at today is, beneath the town of Centralia, Pennsylvania, underground mine fires have been burning since
See, I don't understand this one. How is there still a fire that's been going on for so long?
1962. What started the fire is still up for debate. It's estimated that these fires have been burning ever since 1962. Now, I know some of you are thinking, if it's just a fire in a coal mine, then why can't firefighters put it out? Well, realistically, it's too hot to be dealt with properly. And at its current rate, it'll most likely be burning for at least another 250 years. Oddity number 2, Point Roberts, Washington. This part of Canada here, called the Tawasin Peninsula, is mostly all Canadian territory.
This one, the classic.
For this part, Point Roberts, which belongs to the state of Washington.
I know this fact, so I want to skip. I want to try and find some ones that I don't know, because this is just where they have to go. They basically have to go through Canada and then go back around so they can go to school. That's what I hear for this one. If you don't know this one, I apologize, but I think everyone knows this one.
Which we'll look at is the Mississippi.
Oh, so wait, first, second. Oh, there's another one here. Oh, we're not skipping then. What am I saying? I thought it was just based off this. All right, let's go back.
But a treaty is a treaty. The third oddity is a place called the Northwest Angle, which is part of Minnesota, but is separated by a lake. When looking at the outline of Minnesota, you can see this little part on top here called the Northwest Angle. But we're all thinking the same thing here. Why is this part of the USA? It's not as if it's rich in anything, but here's why it is. It all started with the Treaty of Paris, ending in the American Revolution. The USA was then gifted with Northwest Territory. Now, not the Canadian Northwest Territory, this one. It was a huge chunk of land, which was ready to be carved into multiple new states. It was originally intended to hit the northwesternmost part until it hit the Mississippi River. But the base of the river was further south than Lake of the Woods, making this impossible. This shockingly resulted in a small notch of land being included in U.S. territory, Northwest Angle, Minnesota. The next oddity which we'll look at is the Mississippi River, being in several states. With a name like the Mississippi River, you would expect it to be in Mississippi alone, right? Wrong. The river actually passes through or borders.
That is so fascinating to me that it is called the Mississippi River when it doesn't even start there, and it doesn't even end in Mississippi either. Actually, I don't know why this. I've probably seen this in videos before, but I can't remember. Why is this the case?
The following states: Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Louisiana.
To be honest, it only goes down the border of Mississippi, which makes sense because you can see all of the borders in this area are based off the river pretty much.
So like many people would think that the Mississippi River flows in just Mississippi, they would be thinking wrong. Another American oddity is about the Kentucky Bend in Kentucky. The Kentucky Bend is an oddity by the previously discussed Mississippi River. This is the westernmost point of Kentucky, bordered to the north by Missouri and to the south by Tennessee. The boundary between Kentucky and Tennessee was intended to be a horizontal east to west line that ended at the Mississippi River. The land north of the line and east of the river was to belong to Kentucky, while the land south of the line and east of the river was to belong to Tennessee.
So this little bit of land here, right?
Meanwhile, Missouri owned the land on the western side of the river.
I don't know.
When surveyors officially decided to mark out the borders of the river, they found out about bends in the river causing major problems and issues. Since the land inside the bend was north of the line and east of the Mississippi River, it belonged to Kentucky, but was cut off from the rest of the state because some land on the other side of the river belonged to Missouri, dripped down below the line.
I love these sorts of borders. They're so fascinating to me.
According to the 2010 census, only 18 people live here.
Oh, people actually live there. I didn't know if anyone lived there or not. Oh, that's quite wild then.
Next, we'll investigate the Southwick Jog between Connecticut and Massachusetts. If you look at the border between these two states, it looks like a perfectly straight line. However, if you look closely, you can see that there's this little notch that juts out here known as the Southwick Jog. This actually dates back to the 1700s, when colonial borders still existed and were still being fought over. The land inside of this jog was given to Massachusetts to finish a very long series of surveying disputes. This was given to Massachusetts, and to this day, people from Connecticut are still not happy about it. In Connecticut, you can even buy Take Back the Notch merchandise. The next one, which we'll look at, is over by the Atlantic Ocean and is known as the Delmarva Peninsula. The name comes from the fact that 3 states own pieces of it: Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. But you may question, why exactly did 3 states want to own a piece of this land? Well, for starters, this peninsula had over 2,400 miles of coastline. Many people would see this as a good thing, and rightfully so, as there are factors to it such as lots of access to fishing and boat access. Much of this 6,000 square miles of land is also fertile for agriculture. Although with such complicated borders, there have been multiple disagreements between the 3 states, and to try and solve this problem, the residents of Delmarva have tried multiple times to become an independent state. They tried in 1833, 1835, 1852, and much more recently in 1998, although they have failed each time. The residents of this place, however, think of it as an unofficially independent state, and even go as far as calling the residents of the main 3 parts of the states mainlanders. Next, we'll look at the 12-mile circle in Delaware. Looking at a map of Delaware, we can see that they have what no other state has: this little rounded bit here at the top. The roots of this place go back to 1682, when Delaware had become an independent state. This is also when the Duke of York awarded the new state to William Penn, who already had control over the adjacent peninsula. The Duke decided the new colony's territory should be an arc with a 12-mile radius drawn from the courthouse in the town of New Castle on the Delaware River, the border with Delaware and Pennsylvania. The next oddity which we'll look at is in regards to New Mexico. If you follow New Mexico's borders, you'll see that when it reaches Oklahoma, it jumps 2.3
See, what the hell causes this? What the fuck?
miles to the right. The boundary then heads north in a straight line the rest of the way along the Oklahoma Panhandle. But
God, it's so close to being a perfect square.
why is this? Well,
Wait, is it? Wait, let me go back. Am I being dumb? New Mexico, wait.
New Mexico. If you follow
I'm dumb anyway, it's not, because it borders Mexico. I knew I was talking shit.
Oklahoma Panhandle. But why is this? Well, the simple answer is that the guy who created the 1859 survey for New Mexico's eastern boundary kinda goofed it up. Some of his measurements were taken from the south headed north. Another part was taken from the north headed south. The border was supposed to be along the 103rd meridian. The section with Oklahoma was along that line. The section with Texas wasn't. Pennsylvania also has a geographical quirk on the other side of its state. There's a triangle which sticks up between Ohio and New York, giving it access to Lake Erie. It's called the Erie Triangle, although some people also commonly refer to this place as the Pennsylvania Chimney. Again, this can be explained simply by saying Pennsylvania wanted access to Lake Erie. But a lot of people did back in the 1700s. 4 states now lay claim to land in the United States on Lake Erie: Michigan, Ohio, New York, and as we've just found out, Pennsylvania. Although the US weren't the only ones that wanted this triangle, the British and the French fought over it as well.
Oh, wow.
But Pennsylvania managed to buy this for just over $150,000.
Jesus.
The 11th oddity of this video also has Lake Erie as an answer, with the question involving the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. When looking at a map involving this, you'd begin to think that if Michigan is down here, then why is this part not Wisconsin's? Why on earth does this part belong to Michigan? This all started in 1835.
There's so many more, more of these. They're not really exclaves or enclaves. I can't remember which one's which, but and because they're usually between cities. These not cities, sorry, countries. These are just states. But those kinds of things, like, there's so many in the US that I didn't even realize.
When Michigan applied for statehood and tried to lay claim to a strip of land near this part of Toledo, Ohio. But Ohio was not having it. They needed that bit of land for access to Lake Erie. To make a long story short, Ohio eventually was granted the Toledo Strip, and Congress gave Michigan the Upper Peninsula in return.
Damn.
If you'd like to learn more about why this Upper Peninsula is Michigan's, take a look at this video on my other channel.
It's not really an exclave though, is it? It's still somewhat close to
Did a
it.
whole video basically breaking down why this little bit belongs to Michigan. The next one, which we'll investigate, is about the southwest corner of Alabama, known as the state's foot. The origins of this rectangle began in 1719, when the French...
Yeah, see, I don't understand that one either. Like, why has Florida got that bit of land as well? It just doesn't really make sense.
Who controlled Mobile Bay, and the Spanish, who oversaw what is now the Florida Panhandle, agreed to make the Perdido River between Mobile and Pensacola the border between their territories. When U.S. officials signed the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, they invoked the 1719 agreement to snag this corner of land as part of what would become Alabama. And when the USA acquired the Florida Panhandle, the border between the two states remained the same. Next, we move on to this next oddity, which is another one related to borders and funny shapes with states. This time it's the Missouri Boot Heel. It sticks out of this southeast corner of Missouri and into the northeast quadrant of Arkansas. The credit for the Boot Heel...
New Madrid, Dunklin. Oh god, these county names are so wild. New Madrid is next to Dunklin, Butler, and you got Mississippi, Scott. What a random name, New Madrid.
apparently goes to this guy, John Hardiman Walker, an influential landowner in southeastern Missouri. In 1818, officials in the Missouri Territory petitioned Congress to form a new state. They asked for their borders to be quite south, but not as south as they expected. But they realized if they kept it there, that would put them under jurisdiction of the Arkansas territorial government. So he asked for some additions that would make the state a whole lot bigger. Congress rejected most of the additions. However, they did accept this 980 square mile extension, which is now known as the Missouri Boot Heel. Oddity number 14, Alaska. When you look at a map of the world, you can see that Alaska...
He sounds like Owen Wilson. A map. Wait, what he says this here?
Oddity number 14, Alaska. When you look at a map of the world, you can see that...
What accent is this? This is the most... I've never... Wait, where's Owen Wilson from? I'm just thinking of when he says, wow. Wow. Reminds me of that. Dallas, Texas. Oh, where is this guy from? I've never heard his accent before. I know this is not even what the video is about, but I don't really know.
Alaska is the northernmost state of the USA. But what's not as immediately obvious is that it's also the easternmost state. But how can this be?
We know that.
Hawaii must be more eastern than Alaska, right? Wrong, as Alaska is home to the Aleutian Islands. They extend so far east.
If I was learning about this for the first time, I would be like, wait, what? But I've heard this fact or this whatever so many times, so it's just like, yep.
That they extend from the west all the way to the eastern hemisphere. The next weird feature of the USA is that in the wintertime, you can walk all the way from the USA to Russia.
Is this actually possible?
But how? They look so far apart from each other.
With like Alaska, is it actually possible? Does the whole ocean there really freeze? I can't really believe that bit. Maybe it does because it's obviously so cold there.
Well, they would be if Alaska didn't exist. This state is really close to Russia, and if it's cold enough, the water will freeze, allowing one to walk from the USA to Russia. Although Russia has the area heavily guarded, so it isn't as simple as it sounds. The next one, which we'll investigate, is the mysterious uninhabited point, which is called Elm Point in Minnesota. This is actually not too far from another, more famous oddity, the Northwest Angle. No one really knows for sure how this came to be Minnesota's. After all, it's just an uninhabited place, with nothing really special to offer. It does appear to have some significance, as it has its own dedicated Wikipedia page, and has pretty high rankings on Google Maps.
Damn.
It only really has Elmo Point because it's on the 49th parallel, the border between Canada and the USA. The next oddity which we'll investigate is the Four Corners Monument. The Four Corners Monument is a monument...
This one's quite cool. I think this monument would be pretty cool to go to because it's so fascinating how this is literally like you stand in the middle, you're in 4 states.
Which was dedicated to a border between 4 states in the US, Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah. You may not think this is anything out of the ordinary at first, but it is if you realize all the other states have borders with wiggly lines and zigzags and all sorts. You begin to think, how did these 4 states end up having a perfectly straight border when normally 2 states couldn't? Well, for a simple answer, this clean intersection came to be when Congress created new territories to discourage people from aligning with the Confederacy during the Civil War. Another one is about the Florida Panhandle. When most people envision Florida, they envision mostly this bit, with major cities like Tampa, Orlando, and Miami. But what most people don't realize is that Florida also has this panhandle here. But why? Well, to put in a simplified answer, Spain lost interest in that bit of the United States. So Spain simply said, "Here you go," and handed it over. And without war or any disagreements, they gave this to Florida. Oddity number 19 is about the apparent micronations that exist within the USA.
Well, there's more than one. I know this. I think I know this guy's one. But I didn't know there was more.
Ones exist like Malaysia, Zagistan, and Talassa. These micronations do have reasons to believe why they're independent. Malaysia and Zagistan have their own capital cities, their own heads of government, and some of these micronations even go as far as having their own currencies. Other examples of micronations in the US are the Conch Republic. The Conch Republic was established in 1982 in Key West, Florida, as a humorous protest against a US Border Patrol checkpoint. While not a true sovereign nation, it has its own passports and celebrates its independence every year at events and parades.
Wait, is it a usable passport, or is it just sort of like a cool little item to have? Can you actually use it? I assume you can't, right?
The Kingdom of Enenquio. This micronation claims to be a sovereign state and was founded on an abandoned naval sea platform in the Pacific Ocean. However, it has no international recognition. The Kingdom of Elior. Elior is a micronation located in the United States and Denmark. It's situated on a small island in Denmark, but also has a presence in St. Croix, US Virgin Islands.
What the hell?
It's known for its playful claims of sovereignty and its unique culture. The next one, which we'll focus on, is related to Alaska. It's about this small town called Hyder, in which the only road access you can get to this town is by going through the border with British Columbia. This town is also one of the few places in which you can drive from the US to Canada without going through a customs checkpoint. Let's talk about Marble Hill. When you look at a map of New York City, you would think that Marble Hill is part of the Bronx, right? Well, whilst geographically it may look as if that's the case, it's actually part of
Why though? Why didn't they just make it easier for themselves and just be like, yeah, you're part of the Bronx now? Because it doesn't really make any sense why they would just keep to this. I don't really understand, especially when it's a city. If it was a state, I understand it more, but this is just a city layout.
Manhattan. Why? Well, for a simplified answer, this is due to a canal project in the early 20th century that rerouted the Harlem River. Now let's look at the Statue of Liberty, an incredibly famous New York landmark, right? Well, yes.
It was made in France.
However, Lady Liberty is actually kind of a Jersey girl. The federally owned 15-acre landmass she inhabits, previously known as Bedloes Island, sits in a portion of the upper New York Bay.
Oh, it's about the island.
Which is kind of an enclave of New Jersey. Jersey City, to be exact.
Oh, damn.
So to clear things...
That was actually quite a lot more interesting than I thought it was going to be, because I've heard that France one so many times, but that is wild. So, some of New York cities in New York... New York, Jersey. Some of New York cities in New Jersey. I knew it was close, but what?
Things up. The Statue of Liberty is part of New York, but is surrounded by New Jersey.
Is this This is still New York, isn't it? Because this is Manhattan. Yeah, this is Manhattan. Wait, this has baffled me.
Let's now go on and talk about Texarkana, which the name suggests is a border shared by 2 states,
Lovely.
Texas and Arkansas. But why? For an answer, railroads. Back when these cities and borders were gradually forming and coming as how they are today, people were working on railroads. And a railroad worker noticed that a border was split between Texas and Arkansas. The city was at the time named Texark, but the railroad worker proposed the idea of Texarkana, and that's how Texarkana came about.
Jeez.
So when you look at a map of the USA, North America, or even the world, it depicts pretty much all of the US, with the exception of Alaska to be further south than Canada. but there are actually 6 states which allow you to head directly south and end up in Canada. There's the obvious Alaska, but there's also Michigan, Washington with Point Roberts, Minnesota, New York, and Maine. Another interesting oddity is that you could drive west from South Bend, Indiana, which is in the extreme part of the Eastern time zone, and continue along Interstates 80 and then 90. And by the time you hit northern Idaho, you would then be using the Pacific time zone. However, go from Duncan, Arizona to Tallahassee, Florida, and you would have only crossed one time zone. It really just goes to show you how big and diverse of a country the USA actually is. Now let's have a look at the Virginia and Maryland border on the Potomac River. What happens here is that Maryland actually owns the water rights on this river. And as for the border cutting straight through the middle, Virginia's border would stop at the shoreline. What's also funny about this border is that when it rains, Maryland gets bigger and Virginia shrinks due to Maryland's
Is this actually true?
water rights.
Because I guess the river gets bigger or what? Like, yeah, it just expands. Wait, what?
Now let's take a look at the borders with the United States and Canada once again. Now we've all seen this part of Canada, which is almost dipping down into the USA with their huge cities like Toronto, Hamilton, and London. And another fact about this place is that most people live within this part of Canada rather than all the other spaces around Canada. What's also interesting about this place is that this extends further south than the northernmost point of California. Now let's have a look at Interstate 65. There's something that is incredibly fascinating about this highway, and that's related to their time zones. This is the only interstate in the US to go into a time zone more than once, starting in Gary, Indiana with the Central Time Zone. It then stays like that until you reach White County, where you're now technically in Eastern Time. It then changes back to Central Time in Hart Country, Kentucky. Continuing on with time zones, let's explore 2 states which are on the complete opposite side of the country, Oregon and Florida. Let's just say that the time would be 5 p.m. in Oregon. In Malheur County, Oregon, it would be 5 p.m. In Pensacola, Florida, however, the time would only be 6 p.m., technically making Oregon and Florida only 1 hour apart time-wise.
What?
Despite being 2,900 miles, 4,700 kilometers away distance-wise. And finally, to wrap up this video,
I'm so
we'll be
confused.
looking at the last and final oddity, Bristol, which is a city shared by both Virginia and Tennessee. The main reason for this being, again, the confusing borders that some states have. There's even a street in which the state border passes through. These states
Jeez.
share the same
That's quite
twin
cool.
cities, and Bristol is actually split almost in half by these 2 states. So yes, there is a Bristol in Virginia and a Bristol in Tennessee. However, both are the same city. So that was
Mad.
30 geographical
Well, there we go. There's also a Bristol in England as well. Well, there we go. Some geography oddities. This was fun to see, and yeah, hopefully you enjoyed. Let me know some of your opinions on these facts. If they're all completely legit, I mean, I assume they are. But yeah, until next time, like, subscribe. Peace.